Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at one of the feature races at Del Mar on Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. It is the Grade 2 Hollywood Turf Cup. This one going the mile-and-a-half distance on the turf course on Black Friday out at Del Mar. And with it being Black Friday, you definitely want to check out the sale that we've got going on at DRF.com if you want to refresh your past performance packages to handicap some of these stakes races coming up on this weekend at Del Mar, because there are plenty of Grade 2 and Grade 1 races on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday out west. You can do so by getting 20% off everything in the DRF store. Just use the coupon code BF2025 at shop.drf.com. Mike, let's throw up the field of 9 runners entered for this Hollywood Turf Cup. And sometimes these graded stakes out at Del Mar this weekend after Thanksgiving are bolstered by some shippers from Kentucky or from the East Coast. It's not really the case in this Hollywood Turf Cup. I mean, I guess Truly Quality is sort of a quasi-shipper because he's run all over the country, and Jonathan Thomas can be based in different places all over the country, but he generally has done his best running in California recently and kind of have a familiar group out there. And I think Truly Quality, who won this race last year, looks pretty tough again on paper.
Yeah, he's just supposed to be really tough. You're right. I mean, you wouldn't call him a California horse, I guess, necessarily, but he doesn't have to bring his track with him. He runs well anywhere, and he's run well out here several times. And ultimately, this race just did not come up very strong for a Grade 2.
You know, you've got the top 3 finishers from last year, Truly Quality, Balnikov, the 911 Turbo, all back in this race, and they're arguably the 3 horses to beat. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this Hollywood Turf Cup. And I mean, there's a horse in here, Mike, that you kind of know what the game plan always is going to be. The number 1 Balladeer. He is a one-way front runner. That's the only style that he uses successfully. And getting a mile-and-a-half using that style for Balladeer has always been a problem, but I'm not sure they're able to change it up with him. He's got to go to the front, especially breaking from the rail.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's going to be your leader at the pace call of this race. That's his running style. Even, it's not like he's out there, trying to rate slow paces most of the time either, David. He just sort of moves right along up there. He goes, a pretty solid clip and takes him as far as he can.
And even though it doesn't appear that there's much other speed in this race, Mike, the presence of a horse like Balladeer just creates the possibility that the pace could come apart for some of the closers, because a horse like that doesn't really want to be rated up front tends to string the field out, and that just creates a situation where there are gaps and closers are able to do a little bit better than it might seem based on the amount of speed that's in this race, because there really isn't very much outside of Balladeer. And speaking of Balladeer, let's begin our discussion of the contenders with him. And as we were just alluding to, Mike, the mile-and-a-half distance has always been a problem for him. It seems to expose some stamina limitations. And more than that, it's really exposes some character limitations with him, because he's not really a horse that wants to go slow up front. He wants to open up on fields. He's hard to rate. So going this distance where you want to try to reserve some energy for a late sprint, that's not what Balladeer does best. So it's hard to build the case for him winning this race.
That was my main issue with him too. I mean, I guess adding in the fact that for some reason, they decided to drop him back to 6.5 last time. Yeah. And now they're going all the way back out to a 1.5 miles. You don't see that work very often. Again, he's just, I wanted to look at him and regard him as a dangerous speed in a race where maybe you don't trust some of the horses are going to be trying to catch him, but he just doesn't seem like a horse who's going to be handy enough to rate this thing in a manner that he might need to get this distance.
Yeah, and the other thing about him is he has never had success at Del Mar. He's just blanked in 7 starts here. And this Del Mar turf course can be pretty conducive to horses coming from off the pace, especially going this distance. And Balladeer's got the opposite running style to that. The number 2 flashiest, Mike, he's a horse that's never really been a graded stakes horse. He's primarily been in optional claiming allowance races over the past couple of seasons, and he's run okay. His last race finishing second behind Balnikov. He had a spot of trouble in mid-stretch, but never looked like he was going to be any match for that foe. And I know this isn't the toughest Grade 2 event. I still feel like the class level might be just a cut above where flashiest is at.
I feel the same way about him. He's all. I think you also have to really question this distance for a horse like him too. I mean, he's never really shown that he wants to go longer. He ran fine last time, but he was only second best in that race. He's a horse who, is another one. He was as a 3-year-old, it felt like he had a chance to maybe turn out to be pretty good, and never really happened for him.
The number 3, Rostaman Vibe. He is a horse that is making his first start off the claim for New Connections, picked up for $50,000 by Mark Glatt out of his last race. And I was looking up some stats for Mark Glatt and DRF Formulator. Actually does pretty well first off the claim on the turf, 7 for 31 with a $2.08 ROI over the past 5 years. Mike, I wonder what your take is on this horse stretching out to the 1.5 distance, because he's had success going as far as 1 3/8 miles, but he's never really shown that he can do it at this class level.
Yeah, I guess the distance is maybe the least of my concerns with him. But I certainly have the class concerns about this horse, to be sure. I mean, they did. I know it wasn't for this trainer, but they did try the grade two, 2 starts back. I thought he got a perfectly good trip in that race, and he just looked totally overmatched to me.
The number 4, 911 Turbo. He was the third place finisher behind a Truly Quality and Balnikov in the 2024 edition of the Hollywood Turf Cup. And I thought he ran pretty well in that race, Mike. He made the first move off cover around the far turn and kind of took over briefly in the stretch before he was overwhelmed by those 2 closers. Since then, he has not won, and it actually has been a long time since this horse has won a race, going all the way back to the end of 2023. But he's run okay against some tough competition in Kentucky in recent starts. They tried a couple of races during that short Kentucky Downs meet. He ran into some pretty tough foes like Lagos and Quattrocento there. And last time out, he was dropped into an allowance race at Keeneland, but that was a pretty salty allowance race, and he was just hung wide every step of the way.
Yeah, he didn't get a good trip last time. Yeah, I just like this horse overall. I just think he's a decent horse, and he's just super versatile. He's versatile in terms of distance, and he's versatile in terms of running style. So those are both positives for him. I'm not going to sit there and say that I love him in this race, David, but I do think he can win. And he's a horse who, listen, in this race last year, he was only third, and I thought he was only third best, but he was 12-1 that day. And if he's, a similar price in this race, I wouldn't argue with anybody who wanted to take a shot here.
The number 5, Grogu, is another one of these horses that is getting a bit of a class test as he steps up against Graded Stakes Company here. But we'll take a look at his most recent race where he got the job done against first level allowance, optional claiming condition. And Mike, I like the run that he puts in between, or I should say inside of horses. He was between horses on the turn, moved inside in the stretch to make this run to catch the leader who kind of ran off from the field at the quarter pole and then came back to them. And he finishes like a horse across the wire that shouldn't mind a little bit of added ground. I know he's never gone the 1.5 mile distance before, but watching his replays gives you a little bit of confidence. I just don't quite know how good he is as he steps up against this field.
He's obviously got a ton to prove here. I mean, nothing he did for either of his prior 2 trainers would suggest that he could win a race like this. I do think when I watched not only that race that we just showed there, the replay, which I just thought he ran really, really well in there. The trip did work out for him. But he was finishing in that race the first time they went along with him. But even his first start for Leonard Powell, I thought he really deceptively moved forward in that race. This is a really sharp trainer. He's not a guy who takes tons of shots with horses like this. So I think it's a good sign that he's bumping this horse up to go a distance. And he's got, it's kind of surprising that they never really stretched him out before, because he's got a lot of pedigree to go longer distances on the grass. And they're finally letting this horse do it. I liked his last race. I thought he was interesting as a wild card in here.
The number 6, Request, is another one that's going to be a big price in this race. He tried the grade 2 Sycamore at Keeneland 2 starts back. That was probably a tougher grade 2 event than what he's going to be needing here, but he was not competitive whatsoever in that race. They brought him back to Southern California for a 1 3/8 race at Del Mar last time. He was no match for the late kick of Balnikov. And Mike just feels like at this level, he doesn't really possess the finishing ability that's necessary.
Yeah, I just thought he was a really, really difficult horse to make a case for.
The number 7, Truly Quality, like we said earlier, he was the winner of this race last year, and he's probably the one to beat in the 2025 edition of the Hollywood Turf Cup. But let's take a look back at the replay of him winning this race in 2024, where he's the horse in the green cap right between runners that's highlighted first. Outside of him is Balnikov, 911 Turbo, also in this race, battling on inside of both of them. And Mike, it looks like Balnikov has made this slingshot move up the far turn, like he's 1-5 to win this race at the 8th pole. But Truly Quality, he is a relentless finisher. He wants every bit of this 1.5 mile distance, and he's able to assert his stamina in that final 1/8 of a mile to come back on the inside of Balnikov to get the job done. Now, he's only been seen on the racetrack twice since then, and they both have been losses. Obviously, something went wrong in the San Marcos going back to earlier this year, because he was off for a long time after that. Did get in a start once again over this Del Mar turf course in the Del Mar Handicap this summer. And again, he put in sort of that relentless run where he was just sort of picking up top steam at the finish of the race, and now he gets an extra furlong. So he's pretty logical trying to win this race 2 years in a row.
Yeah, he's just, if he shows up here and he's the issues that you pointed out so far with not really running this year, and I think that's the kind of stuff you worry about with a horse like him. But if he just shows up here and he's ready and he runs his A race, he's just supposed to be really hard for these horses to beat. I'm a little turned off that they're making an equipment change here, and I'm obviously a little turned off that he hasn't been able to run too much this year. But I just felt like he was clearly the horse to beat, especially going this far.
the number 8 Balnikov. He was the horse that took that heartbreaking defeat in the Hollywood Turf Cup last season. Mike, I imagine you were on him that day because I know you've been on this horse quite a few times during his career. And he's not one that loves to win races, but he is coming off a victory last time out. And maybe it was a confidence boosting victory that Balnikov needed. We'll take a look at the replay of that race at Del Mar, where he was getting significant class relief. He beat a couple of horses we already talked about that we don't really rate as contenders in this race, but you had to be impressed by the turn of foot that Balnikov puts in to just completely overwhelm this field in the final quarter mile as he draws off pretty impressively. Mike, the distance has to be the major question for him because a mile and a half, it always feels like it's been a little bit outside of his scope, and you kind of saw it in that replay of the Hollywood Turf Cup that we showed earlier. But if Balladeer creates some pace and the race comes apart, it could fall into his lap.
Yeah, the distance is it's a bigger issue for him than it is for his main rival. And we saw that in this race last year. I guess if he's going to upset a horse like that, who does show up and run his best race here, and that could be a question too, but they're just going to have to time it maybe a little bit better this time. Listen, he's good enough to win. I feel like even though he didn't hold on in this race last year, I think he showed that he can run his race going this far. It's all about trips for him, David. He's very trip dependent. He's pace dependent, but those things could certainly come together here. I like that they gave him the confidence boost last time too, because the Del Mar handicap, like there are some races in his recent running lines that maybe don't look that good, but races where he ran way better than it looks and he didn't get good trips. The race 2 back, that wasn't the case in the Del Mar handicap. He was bad in that race, but he bounced back very nicely last time.
He was bad in that race. He was also uncharacteristically rank in the early stages of that Del Mar handicap. He just refused to settle early, which is not really this horse's characteristics. So we'll see if he's able to settle and finish in this race. The number 9, Mondego, a horse who kind of been knocking on the door at this grade 2 level across recent starts. He hasn't hit the board, but he's been right there within a couple lengths of the winner, Gold Phoenix, on each occasion. I didn't love the trip he got in the Del Mar handicap, Mike, because everyone was starting to move around the far turn, picking up momentum, and Kimura just decided to stay back and wait and wait and wait, and then he finally switched to the outside of Truly Quality and wasn't going to be able to outclose that horse once that one had built up all that momentum. But he did finish well for 5th, and last time out in the John Henry Turf Cup, he was legitimately 3 wide to 4 wide all the way around that far turn, so lost a little ground when he was trying to make his move. I don't know if he's quite as good as the best version of Truly Quality or the best version of Balnikov, but maybe he's one that's moving in the right direction at the end of his 5-year-old season.
Right. And he'll probably be a better price than both of those horses too. Sure. So you can always factor that in. Yeah. Listen, I thought he ran fine in his last 2 races. I didn't think he ran great. I'm not sure that he had huge excuses either time, but maybe he had enough of an excuse to make you want to take a shot with him here at a little bit of a price.
Let's go to our picks for this Hollywood Turf Cup on Friday out of Del Mar. And Mike, I think we're both going for horses that we hope have a little bit of upside, maybe haven't yet seen the best of them in a race where maybe we've already seen the best that horses like Truly Quality and Balnikov have to offer. Your horse that you put on top, Grogu, is clearly the one with the upside in this race.
This is just a race where I just kind of want to take a shot here. Listen, Truly Quality, Balnikov, I like them both. I think they're 2 very logical horses in here, but they do have their questions. I think I have enough questions about both of them to maybe take a little bit of a shot here. And I have been impressed with what Lenny Powell's been able to do with Grogu since he taken over. I think he's gotten this horse good. If I'm going to bet the race, I'm going to take a little shot with him, but he'll have to be a pretty big price.
And I'm not going to say that I love the horse that I put on top, Mondego, but I just think he's had some minor excuses in each of the last 2 races, and it's not like he's been beaten that far by some legitimate competition. So hopefully he can turn the tables with a better trip in here. 9-7-4-8 for me and 5-7-8-1 for Mike in the Grade 2 Hollywood Turf Cup, the future race out of Del Mar on Friday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.